Free Trade Agreement, Opportunities and Misunderstandings, with our visitors, Betsy Monterosa and Elizabeth Long. So one of our, the focus of our conversation today is regarding what is known as the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA for short. What does it mean by that?
So NAFTA is an agreement. It's about trade, all sorts of areas of trade between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. What we really wanted to concentrate on today is talking about the labor aspect of NAFTA, because the labor aspect covers work permits, which are really important with regard to immigration. There are a lot of advantages under NAFTA for work permits for people from Mexico and U.S. to come to Canada. There's also similar agreements between Canada and Peru, Canada, Chile, and Colombia as well. And so, this is not really well known, and that's what we wanted to tell everybody about today.
Okay.
Certainly, I mean, we always want to find the best route, the easiest route, the shortest route for people to come. And under NAFTA, the work permits, they're some of the easiest ones to come. But when you don't know about it, sometimes you go the wrong way, you go the hard way. So, yeah.
And what is currently known about, what do people think when they think of NAFTA?
Some of the things that people think when they hear about NAFTA is that the negative part is that they're losing their jobs. Immigrants will take over their jobs. Businesses will lose because they will leave the country to go to other countries. There are so many, I would say, misinformation about what NAFTA is. Well, NAFTA, it's an agreement, and specifically with regards to the movements of migration of people between those three countries, and also similar international agreements that in a way they use the NAFTA, as Elizabeth mentioned, would be Peru, Colombia, and Chile.
So how does NAFTA connect with the migration of people to other countries?
Well, NAFTA has two parts with regard to immigration. One of the most important ones is NAFTA and all of these other free trade agreements, they have something for professionals to come to Canada. There's a list of, I don't even know how many different kind of professionals. For example, scientists, engineers, academics, all sorts of technologists, etc., to management consultants who can get a work permit if they have that job offer in Canada. And that's a special advantage that is provided only to those countries with the free trade agreements.
This just for my curiosity, does it change? I mean, is it based on what that particular country needs at a certain point in time?
So the different free trade agreements have slightly different professions on them, but the professions are set and they are agreed upon by the countries, so they don't actually change. Okay. So for example, if we as Canadians wanted to go to the US or Mexico, it's already agreed upon. Like as a lawyer, that's on the professions list. So if I wanted to go to the US, I have the right to get a work permit to go to the US.
Under the NAFTA?
Yes, under NAFTA as well. Yeah.
That's very important.
Well, it's just not very known by people that they can come and can get a work permit under NAFTA. For example, a few years ago, we had a lot of Mexican citizens come to Canada, and some of them were engineers, and some of them were technologists or lawyers, and they were making refugee claims, and they were getting denied and sent back, right? Now, if they had known about the NAFTA, and I spoke with a lot of people, and I even spoke with some lawyers who didn't even know about this, right? But if they had known, they could have stayed here, had their work permits, and had their permanent residence by now, by coming through this route.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Because NAFTA was not being broadly advertised about the benefits. Mexican people didn't know how to apply under NAFTA in some situations. So people may have the wrong impression that by entering Canada and to stay in Canada, the only way was to apply for refugee status, which in the long run may hurt them more than benefit them. That's why we encourage people to look for legal advice prior to doing a refugee application, because you may qualify for any other immigration program rather than going through the difficult process of applying for refugee status. One of the things that Liz and I were talking about was that there was no way to come back. Sometimes when people apply for refugee status, there is no way to come back to the temporary status under NAFTA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they will not qualify for a work permit in the future, and some other minister's permit to come back, and things like that.
Yeah.
More?
So, in immigration law, we have several routes. Under the NAFTA work permits, the study permits, they come under the economic route. And the work permits are temporary status. So when you are applying for temporary status, one of the most important things the officer looks at is whether or not he believes that you would leave Canada when you are supposed to leave Canada, because it is temporary status. If a person applies for refugee status, or makes a refugee claim, even if that person wants to withdraw the refugee claim afterwards, or we've even had people who went to the immigration office, told them they wanted to make a refugee claim, and didn't go through with it, but it's on their record. That is a really black mark on their record, which says, well, this person is afraid to go back. Then I'm not going to issue a work permit that gives them status.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people confuse the refugee work permit with a work permit that gives them temporary status. Refugee claimants can get work permits, but it will say on the work permit that it does not grant temporary status. That means that they don't have the right to stay in Canada and work if their claim is denied. They have 30 days to leave the country, and if they don't, they need special minister's permission to come back. That is very different from a work permit that's issued under the economic categories like NAFTA, where it gives them the right to stay in Canada and work until the work permit expires. And under NAFTA, if they continue to have those job offers, they can continue to renew. There is no limit to the amount of time that they can continue to renew those work permits.
Well, it's more about information too, right? I mean, it's about obtaining that accurate information, because that black mark necessarily may not be there because that person genuinely did not want to apply for refugee status. So being denied doesn't necessarily mean that that's a black mark. Being denied, it's unfortunately a limitation that individual has sort of placed around him or herself. Yes.
So in immigration, there's such a hierarchy of applications that the government likes and the applications that they don't like. The government likes people who are going to bring economic benefits to Canada. Like under NAFTA, professionals, it's recognized we need these people to come and work in Canada. With regard to the refugee system, that is probably one of the things that the government actually wants to prevent. One of the reasons why the visas were imposed on Mexican citizens was because there was a lot of Mexican citizens who were filing refugee claims. And so the government imposed visa requirements because they didn't want so many people applying for refugee claims in Canada. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so since 2005, the number of Mexican refugee claims was almost tripled from about 3,400